Alright guys, we're back here with the project. Alright, I just want to get you up to date here. We had quite a bit of problems actually mounting this turbo. Not so much as mounting, but plumbing it was a pain. This particular turbo wound up not being an exact R&R replacement. What wound up happening was the original cooling lines, the water cooling lines, go on this side. So we removed these plugs and set them to plug on this side. But the banjo bolts were too small to fit into here. So we dug around the garage and I actually found some banjo bolts out of an old Mitsubishi TE04 turbo. Or I'm sorry, TD04 turbo. And yeah, we wound up running it on this side, and this is actually from the Mitsubishi, this tube right here. For the bottom tube, what we had to do was we removed, this is actually a power steering line, hard line, the pressure line from the JDM engine that we had for the Subaru here. The banjo was actually the same size, so we just trimmed it to where we wanted it to get this coolant line here attached, and we put a little bead on it so that it wouldn't back off. And yeah, it worked out pretty good. Another problem we were having was actually running this guy. We thought this wasn't going to work because it was a little bit too big, but it wound up working after all. And it's a pretty tight clearance here. There's actually a little cut in the side of the head right here, just so it can barely fit this, and it doesn't touch at all. So we're happy for that. We already mounted the Torque Solutions deletes right here, so we're about to just install it like this because we are still waiting for the bracket for our DeechWorks fuel rails. So we just figured it'd probably be best to install it now without the upper intake on it, and that way we can start measuring up our fuel lines to see the route we're going to take to feed this guy. So let me go ahead and get that done, and we'll be right back with you. Alright, we're just about to start installing the motor. We already installed our competition clutch with the lightweight flywheel. Also, we went ahead and replaced the rear main seal on it. So yeah, we have it up here on the hoist right now. So we're about to put her into there. So let me get back with you. Alright, we have the engine installed now. It is secured to the transmission. Everything's bolted up. We're going to move on to doing the fuel. And what we plan on doing here is, well, we got -6 PTFE fuel line right here. We got quite a bit of fittings. We also have some push lock hose for the return. We have our blocks fuel pressure regulator, and we're still waiting, like I said before, we're still waiting on the brackets for our DeechWorks fuel rails. They did say they will be shipping them, so we should be getting them anytime now. So, but besides that, that's not going to stop us from continuing on. So what we're planning on doing here is we eliminated the factory Subaru fuel filter. And then what we have another fuel filter. I have it right here. Let me get it. Okay, just kind of just a generic straight through fuel filter here. And what we plan on doing is making a bracket to kind of mount it somewhere along here. And then we're just going to run the feed line straight down to there. Run it out under the intake manifold where it's going to Y off into a fitting. And it's going to provide fuel to both of our rails, which would go there and on the other side as well. So another problem that we came around, I just want to mention real quick, is the intake for the turbo. The only thing that seems to fit on there well is the factory one, and I'm not really a big fan of the factory intake tube. We tried a EMUSA, and that was no good at all. It'll actually smash itself up against the deletes right here, and there's really no point. We also tried an offset boot that was supposed to work, and same thing. You can see it's pretty close to here, so it's really hard to kind of get a boot around this. You see all the, this is from the factory boot, leaving all of its nastiness all over it. So what we decided to do is actually just get a turbo guard screen for it. So we're just gonna not really run an air filter or an intake on it at all. It also has a water resistant mesh that goes over it as well, so we'll be running that as well. So normally on a factory, obviously on a factory Subaru, we wouldn't be able to do anything like that because of the airflow meter, but our standalone computer is going to permit this, since it does just run on a map sensor, built-in map sensor, and also the intake air temperature sensor. So it'll be okay. And also we're going to be venting our crankcase right here to catch can and just vent it out in the atmosphere, and as well as our valve covers, venting it to another catch can, and which will also vent into the atmosphere as well. So we're still waiting on our header. We did manage to find a company that will send us the header, so that's supposed to come within the next few days or so. So we'll be unboxing that as soon as it gets here. But for now, we're going to go ahead and get started on our fuel system, and we're going to see how that turns out. So we're going to get started, and then we'll take you through that. Not really step by step, because we don't want to bore you with step by step or play by play. So we'll keep you updated. And actually, before we start our fuel system routing right now, we're going to go ahead and attach the harness to our upper intake manifold right here. This does attach there because we want to be able to see where we have room for our fuel lines. So we don't want to build them now and then get excited. And comes out really, looks really nice. We put on our harness and our intake manifold, and it won't work with it. So we're going to go ahead and attach this back onto the intake manifold. Lay the intake manifold on here, put our rails on, and start doing our lines. Alright guys, I think we pretty much have everything mapped out as far as our fuel path is going to go. We got lucky in a few things as far as mounting some of the components, like our blocks fuel pressure regulator. We actually used the bracket, the original bracket from the Subaru's fuel filter that went right there, and all we did was kind of flatten it out here, drilled it to match the mount that the blocks regulator came with, and just bolted it in there. And yeah, it works out pretty good right there. And you know, instead of just mounting it to the engine or using, you know, I mean, it looks like there's a lot of room to mount wherever we want it, but we're a little limited, or at least I feel like we're limited. Okay, and then we also decided to mount our ethanol content sensor right on that back little mount back there, and that turns out good. There's plenty of clearance. It's, you know, at least a couple of inches away from the intercooler when we installed it, so it's going to work great right there. We have our WRX fuel rails right here, and also with the 90 degrees right there. We're short 190. We just kind of miscalculated. That's the thing about doing fuel systems. Things change. And during the whole process, you think you have everything, and you know you always wind up coming up short, at least a few fittings. So it's good to plan it and kind of stick with it, but in our case, we're just kind of winging it. So what we're going to wind up doing here on the right side is we have a 180 degree fitting here. We're going to go ahead and have it wrap around right there. This is also our 90 degree from right here. So this is going to go, one of these is going to go straight to the regulator, and the other one is going to come from to be a supply. And as far as our fuel supply goes, we mounted our fuel filter right here. Actually, we found this bracket, and I have no idea what it's to, but it worked out perfectly. So it is mounted to the engine, but it is mounted away from everything. So it's actually plenty of clearance everywhere right here. And once again, it doesn't get in the way of the intercooler or anything, so there's still quite a bit of space in there. So it's not sitting flat on the engine or anything. See, it's actually raised up against there. I can actually put my fingers under here, so that's cool. Also, we decided to mount our Russell Y fitting directly to our fuel filter. So these two will be splitting off into one to each rail, and then the returns will come one on each side of here, of our fuel pressure regulator, and then the return will wrap around here somewhere to our content sensor, and then this on back to the return, back to the fuel tank. Like I said, we are short a few fittings, and also the hose we decided to go with, we changed our mind. We were going to use just a push lock for the return, just a standard high pressure hose, but we decided to go another route and just use all PTFE type hose for it. So yeah, we're gonna call it for tonight, and we're gonna need to modify the washer fluid reservoir, because it does kind of contact with this, and I really want to keep that here. And my brother doesn't mind if we delete the reservoir, but I kind of want it there. So we're gonna modify that in a way to where it'll work with our setup we have here. So yeah, it's coming along. Most of the hard, I guess you can say, all the hard stuff and most of the fabrication is all done as far as the custom goes, and that everything should be bolt-on from here on out. So I got to install the radiator, our oil cooler, which is it should be a bolt-on kit. It should be, but you know, you never know. Install our header, which will probably be last. Install our ECU, and I'll be explaining that one when we get to it. And also our additional sensors we need to tap in to our intercooler. We are going to be tapping in our intake air temperature sensor right into the intercooler itself. And also we need to run some vacuum line from the computer itself to our intake manifold. And yeah, so we're going to leave it here, and we're going to pick up on it another day.